Hafa, welcome to the first session of the Docomo Pacific Work Better Together webinar series. I'm Nestor Lecanto from KUAM News, and I'll be your moderator. Thanks for joining us today on Docomo Pacific's Max Meeting video conferencing platform. As a thought leader and innovator in the telecommunications industry in Guam and the Marianas, Docomo Pacific will be hosting a series of webinars with a goal to connect leaders, experts, and decision makers to address current topics and issues and to provide effective approaches and solutions to these challenges. Today's session's theme is Reconnecting Guam, Tourism's Path Forward. As an island paradise destination, Guam relies heavily on tourism as a major economic driver. Tourism generates about $1.85 billion for the local economy and supports over 21,000 jobs in the industry. With the coronavirus pandemic putting a halt on global travel, Guam's tourism industry has been significantly impacted by this crisis. Our island is faced with an unprecedented challenge to reduce the impact of the pandemic and stimulate the recovery of the tourism industry. As we prepare to reopen our island and welcome our visitors, it is important that we connect and collaborate as a community to align and unify our efforts towards restarting and rebuilding our tourism economy. Our agenda today: Docomo Pacific has brought together a high-level panel for today's 2-hour webinar. Each of our 6 speakers will present for 15 minutes. We allocated a few minutes after each for a few questions. Attendees can ask questions through the Q&A feature on Max Meeting. We'll try our best, but please understand if we don't get to your questions. We will email a link after the webinar where you'll be able to download the PowerPoint presentations. And as an added bonus, we have a prize giveaway. I'm pleased to announce that at the end of the webinar, Docomo Pacific will have a raffle for a Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and you must be virtually present to win. So be sure to stay logged on, and I'm sure you won't want to miss any of the speakers we have today. And so to start it off, I'd like to introduce Dr. Parag Khanna. He is a founder and managing partner at FutureMap. He'll be speaking on connectivity in the new world, creating meaningful connections and collaborations through technology and travel in the new post-pandemic world. Parag Khanna is a leading global strategy advisor, a world traveler, and best-selling author. He is founder and managing partner of FutureMap, a data and scenario-based strategic advisory firm. Parag's newest book is The Future is Asian: Commerce, Conflict, and Culture in the 21st Century. Parag was named one of Esquire's 75 most influential people of the 21st century, and he was featured in Wired Magazine's Smart List. He has traveled to nearly 150 countries and is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Dr. Khanna, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, sir.
Nestor, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. It's obviously a pity that we're not all gathered in person, and I regret to say that for all the places I've been, I've not yet set foot on Guam, but I certainly hope to correct that one day. Well, I'm honored to kick off this conversation. I see you have a very detailed program that's really focused on the kinds of policy changes that are going to be critical and navigating this turbulent environment. So I hope that I can contribute to that conversation. I have a few slides to share to illustrate where I see us going. And so let me just kick off with those. And just waiting to get control of the slides. There we go. So let me just first locate us in terms of the evolution of connectivity. We think of connectivity, especially when we are thinking in the telecommunications sense, as something that is wireless. The everyday citizen just holds their phone up and they say, look, I'm connected, you know, and they don't appreciate the full extent of the infrastructure of connectivity that our telecommunications companies and governments have invested trillions of dollars in laying down around the world. So the first thing I've done is to produce a map of the physical networks of global infrastructure in the areas of transportation, energy, and communications. And that means highways and railways and electricity grids, but just as importantly, of course, it means the fiber optic internet cables. And what you don't see, of course, are the satellites that are navigating a certain, orbiting the Earth and so forth. So the physical infrastructure of connectivity is the reason why we reached the state of bandwidth access globally that we have in recent years, and the massive increase in the services economy that we have had in recent years in terms of the ability of people to share data globally. And then, of course, also at the same time, the physical mobility. And one of the tragedies of the pandemic is that, in December 2019, we were able to look back and say, wow, a record nearly 1.5 billion people have traveled internationally as tourists. And now, of course, that's at a standstill. So the question is, what do we do with this connectivity moving forward? How can we have a secure and connected world moving forward so we can restore and exceed those previous levels of interaction, physical and digital? Let me get back to this point about physical movement and what we have lost, if you will, or at least temporarily suspended. One of the other records from last year was not only the number of tourists and business travelers, but the number of expatriates, the number of people physically living outside of their home country. And that had reached almost 300 million people, which was also really a record in history. A lot of countries have moved towards seamless visa on arrival entry schemes and so forth in order to facilitate the growing number of cross-border migrants, business travelers, workers, and so forth. And that's so essential because even though in, let's say, some parts of the Western media, you would hear about populism and xenophobia being the dominant norms, in reality, what was happening is that more and more countries were realizing we need more migrants, we need more investors, we need more business travelers, right? We need more digital nomads, and there's a competition underway actually to recruit them. And I hope that that animates things moving forward as we try and re-stimulate our economies. I can already see countries saying that they're offering these digital nomad visas. Estonia, Fiji, Barbados. I'm sure you've been reading anecdotally about this. At another level, countries like Italy and Spain and Sweden have been selling off large amounts of land to attract people to go and live there. So I hope that we will restore the global flow of people and migrants within and among the regions of the world. At the same time, we have to take into account, I should mention, climate change factors. People may be moving to entirely new geographies over time, and I'll come back to that. Now, let me say a point about the geography that's of principal interest to many of us here on this call, which is Asia. And the reason why we should take, again, the pandemic in perspective in terms of how it impacts Asia. Because for better or worse, this is the most populous region of the world. Half the world's, more than 50% of the world's population lives on this map that you're seeing right now. Well over half, more like 55, 60% of the human population lives here on this map. And that's probably always going to be true for our lifetimes and our children's lifetimes. And so what's very important is to think about what the new geographies of growth are going to be for all of our industries, whether it's telecoms, whether it's tourism, and so forth. So it's important that we not think of the Asia story as just being a China story. Because if you remember back to the post-war decades, it was Japan that really led Asia's renaissance, its rebound. Its economic miracle was led by Japan for 25 years. And by the mid-1970s, Japan became the world's second largest economy. Then came the tiger economies. They were following the Japanese modernization, industrialization, and technological paradigm. And it was China that learned from the experience of Japan and the tiger economies. And not only learned from them, they were its largest investors. In other words, China became China, not just because of its reforms, but because it was learning from and drawing investment from the Asian economies that came before it. And now here's the important thing, because for many people around the world, they look at Asia and they just see China. But the truth is that whether we're talking about economics or geopolitics, the future and the prospects for a more balanced and diversified and prosperous and inclusive Asian future includes looking at these fourth wave countries that I've highlighted in orange. So the populations of the countries of South and Southeast Asia, more than a dozen countries spanning from Pakistan to the Philippines, that's 2.5 billion people, right? So nearly a third of the world population is just in these countries in orange. And up until the pandemic, their average growth rate was starting to really accelerate at around 5%. If they continued that, and if we can restore that growth of 5% a year across these economies, they would equal China's present GDP in less than 10 years. So we cannot ignore all of these countries. Yes, it's fragmented. Yes, many of them are starting from a lower level of development. That's part of why they are growing so quickly. But they're very young. Every one of these countries in orange has a younger median age than China does, except for Thailand, every single one of them. So this is the epicenter of global human demographic potential. These are the populations that are going to get much more connected. When you look at mobile phone penetration, it's rising here. When you look at e-commerce and mobile banking and so forth, still relatively low, but growing fast. So I want people to identify not just Asia as a whole, but these fourth wave growth countries as the epicenter of the future. And of course, they're very close to us physically. I personally live in Singapore, and we see the fact that despite the short-term setback of the pandemic, these countries are putting in place the stimulus measures, the support for SMEs, and of course the rigorous or vigorous action against the pandemic that will hopefully get them back on track towards the end of this year. Now, let me emphasize that in the previous slide, I was showing you just the Asian region. And the fact is that for better or worse, as much as I and yourselves want to promote global connectivity, we don't know when we will have that seamless transcontinental interregional physical mobility again. It's a good thing we have the digital. It's a good thing we can have this conversation. But we are, in any case, moving towards a world that is tri-regional or multi-regional. North America is going its own way. It's trying to nearshore production. There's a trade war between the US and China. The US is now trading more with Canada and Mexico than it is with China. In Europe, they not only have a monetary union, they're now finally moving towards a fiscal union. A lot of subsidies, stimulus, multiple trillions of dollars are going to go into a backdoor way of socializing the European debt. So Europe will be concerned with Europe, North America with North America, and Asia with Asia. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's an inevitable consequence of the pandemic and also certain protectionist measures. But let's face it, whether it's migration, trade, supply chains, travel, these things are going to remain regional for a while. So we have to take advantage of that. Asians have to benefit other Asians. We have to bring down trade barriers, increase investment, have greater flows of labor. Asia should be the first region that uses digital technology, such as immunity passports or whatever the case may be, to try and overcome the obstacles that we now face in terms of recreating a future model or paradigm for mobility in the years ahead. And I certainly hope that that we do. Let me go to the next slide. Oops. Let me just, okay, you see a slide here about China being the top trade partner of ever more nations. So one of the, let me skip that. There two are related points. Let's talk about how this Asian connectivity is going to proceed. One of the ways is through the cross-border infrastructure investment that China has been really contributing a lot to over recent years, which is the Belt and Road Initiative. And that speaks to the harmonization of infrastructure, facilitation of trade and supply chains all across Asia between China and its neighbors, as well as efforts that now Japan, India, Europe, the United States, Australia, and other countries are making. And that means highways, railways, fiber optic internet cables, China calls it the digital Silk Road, the Baidu satellite network, Huawei 5G. Of course, a lot of this, people think of as being a very geopolitical and a hegemonic process. But I've been studying the impact of infrastructure on growth and modernization and development and geopolitics for a long time. And what today, when we paint a picture of China building something somewhere as China sort of, taking over that country, what history tells us is that the smaller countries, the weaker countries, use that technology, use that infrastructure to build themselves and to grow their economies and eventually to gain the confidence to resist that encroachment from a powerful state, from a superpower, from an empire. So I think we have to look at this process much more holistically as building connectivity, not just for one power to have leverage over the others, but in order for many countries that have been underdeveloped to get the technology they need faster, better, cheaper. And right now there is what I call, again, competitive connectivity. I call it the infrastructure arms race. And an infrastructure arms race is different from a military arms race. We know there is a military arms race going on, and that's regrettable. The infrastructure arms race is about saying, look at the 5-6 billion people of Asia. How can we give them the tools to modernize faster, better, cheaper? And that's where the telecoms, whether it's Docomo, whether it's Ericsson, Nokia, and others come in, and they say, you know what? It's not going to be all Huawei. Let's go out there and compete. And the winners in this arms race are actually the people. The winners are the developing countries, those whose populations have grown very quickly, those that need the new equipment, those that want to boost their digital economies. And I think that can, in the long run, be a very positive trend. Overall, what's happening is the return of this Afro-Eurasian space. And that means that, again, the center of the world population, the centers of world trade, the centers of economic growth are really all on this map. And this is what the world looked like in the 16th century, believe it or not. 500 years ago, this is what was the world, so to speak. These key continental and regional centers trading robustly with each other overland and in a maritime way. And now we're recreating those Silk Roads, and we're also adding, of course, all of the digital technology. So let's think about this in big picture perspective. This was not a world where one empire, where one superpower was dominant. This was a multipolar world. And now in the 21st century, we are in a multipolar world where United States, Europe, China, other Asian powers are all actually significant players at the same time. And they're competing, yes, but they're collaborating, they're seeking access to each other's markets, they're growing. So I'm not trying to put just a rosy, positive frame on everything. I'm trying to show us that some of the negative scenarios that people are painting today are not necessarily the inevitable ones. And so there is a huge amount of opportunity if we continue to invest in connectivity. Some of the benefits sectors, the subsectors that have benefited so much from the recognition that this connectivity asset class is so critical for our survival, for the continuity of business during the pandemic lockdown, we've all been benefiting from them, from logistics, e-commerce, data storage, of the remote work, encryption, e-learning, entertainment, mobile finance. All of these are growing and growing and growing areas as a result of the wake-up call that this pandemic has provided on the importance of connectivity. So what you're doing as a firm, what all of you are doing as companies and sponsors of this connectivity, whether it's physical or digital, is absolutely crucial to not just restoring the way things were. A lot of people say, when do we go back to normal? And that's not where we want to be, right? We want a new model in which there's more distributed benefits, more connectivity, more participation. But the foundation of that is connectivity. So I want to really applaud what you're doing, and I hope that your efforts today and beyond are going to contribute to that next new and better normal in the years ahead. Thank you.
Dr. Khanna. Thank you very much, Dr. Khanna. That was a fascinating presentation. I do have, we have time for one question. You mentioned, what stood out to me was that you mentioned to look past China and that the new epicenter is South and Southeast Asia, where there is emerging 2.5 billion population. How does Guam fit into that picture in terms of communication, technology, and tourism in particular?
Well, and I don't want to diminish the trans-Pacific role, right? You are a trans-Pacific hub and have that proximity, have that access. So whether it is attracting tourists, thinking of yourselves also as a kind of, offshore hub, as a data hub. Many of the technology companies in the US, as you very well know, are focusing on laying down ever more trans-Pacific cables. They want safe landing points and transit points. And of course, when you think about your marketing as an island, as a destination for investment, for travelers, Southeast Asian people are, again, like I said, young and mobile, and looking for new experiences, new places to do business, new markets. So I think that being a trans-Pacific hub is extremely important. And let's think about, again, in the tensions with China, as a lot of countries, rethink their logistics centers, their hubs, where they go for travel, where trade originates. All of these trends are going to benefit South and Southeast Asia. So hopefully their development will really accelerate, and that's something you should be taking advantage of.
Thank you, Dr. Parag Khanna, founder and managing partner at FutureMap. Moving on to our next guest now. Pleased to introduce Dr. Mario Hardy. He is the CEO of the Pacific Asia Travel Association. Dr. Hardy was appointed CEO of JATA in November of 2014 and is also the past chairman of the board of trustees of the JATA Foundation. That's a nonprofit organization with a focus on the protection of the environment, the conservation of culture and heritage, and support for education. He has 30 years of experience in specialized aviation businesses, focusing on data analytics and technology, coupled with several corporate leadership capacities. He is also the founder of venture capital firm MAP2 Ventures, an investment fund with a wide portfolio of technology-centric businesses in the field of fintech, artificial intelligence, machine learning, green tech, and FMCG, as well as a platform that provides valuable management advice, mentorship, and access to a vast network built in corporate development. Welcome, Dr. Mario Hardy. And please proceed with your presentation.
Sure. Happy day, everyone. Great to be back actually with Guam, although virtually. I hope we can all be together soon, physically, actually in Guam. If you can start the presentation, please. Thank you very much. I'd just like to actually spend just 2 minutes to introduce JATA for those of you who are not aware about who we are as an organization. Guam is a member of the organization, has been for a very long time. We're a nonprofit organization with a focus on developing responsible and sustainable tourism to, from, and within the Asia Pacific region. JATA represents over 99 government destinations on a global basis, and over 850 corporate members, 75 universities, and thousands of students. Essentially, we bring together both public and private sector organizations together to have meaningful debate and discussions about either current trends, current challenges, and opportunities within the industry. Move to the next slide. There we go. Now, let's talk about the current situation in numbers. And I'm going to make a few corrections, and I purposely left the numbers as they are on the screen to show you how things have evolved and how this situation is evolving at a phenomenal rate. Let's look first at the tourism jobs pre-COVID-19. 1 in 10 jobs in the world are actually in the tourism sector. 330 million jobs are actually in tourism. It represents 10.3% of the global economy, $8.9 trillion in terms of tourism contributions to GDP. Again, pre-COVID-19, the global impact on the tourism sector of COVID-19 at the beginning of the crisis was estimated as 5 times worse than 2008 global crisis, and $2.1 trillion in 2.1% point in global unemployment rate contributions from COVID-19. Now, these numbers have changed significantly since the beginning of the crisis. The 75 million jobs actually potentially at risk is now 100 million jobs at risk. The $2.1 trillion of potential loss is now 2.7 trillion in terms of potential loss. The impact in comparison to 2008 is no longer 5 times. It is now 10 times what it was in 2008. So there is no doubt that this event, this crisis, has a significant impact on the tourism sector. For those of you who work in the sector, you see it, you feel it. You don't actually see tourists around you. I live in Bangkok, and we're used to be surrounded by tourists, taking the train in the morning and be squeezed together because there's so many tourists, waiting for a very long time to get a taxi or tuk-tuk to go anywhere. Today, if I call the taxi, it's here within 3 minutes. There is no traffic. It's great benefit, no pollution, no traffic. Things are a little bit easier, but sadly for the economy and for people working in the sector, many have lost their jobs, many businesses have closed. Let me just move to the next slide. Thank you. Back in April, at the early stage of the crisis, JATA did a survey amongst small businesses, SMEs, across the Asia-Pacific region. We had over 500 responded to this survey. At the time of the responses, again back in April, 15% of the businesses of the respondent had actually closed their business permanently. We're not intending to go back to tourism. That was in April, at the beginning of the crisis. 42% actually responded that they only had cash reserve for 2 to 4 months. Again, this is back in April. It means that actually today, most of these businesses are actually either closed or about to close. Again, early April, 38% of the respondents had already made some layoff in their businesses. And we've seen the numbers. If you follow your friends on social media, I think all of us know hundreds of people who have lost their jobs, if not thousands, over the last couple of weeks and months already. But what was actually the most interesting figure for us during this survey is that 65% were not ready for any type of crisis. They were not prepared, and no communication plan, no strategies, obviously no cash reserve also to sustain a crisis of the size of this nature. And nobody did. In all honesty, we all were surprised at what happened and are still living in the shock of actually what happened over the last couple of weeks and months. This actually slide is dated probably about just back in April again, showing the current state of travel restrictions in Asia at that time in mid-April, where essentially, I believe 96% of the world had their border closed completely. Nobody in, nobody out. Who in our lifetime would have ever expected that actually countries would close their doors, where we'd be locked down either in our homes or in our cities and not have the ability to travel again? The impact on the industry, as I mentioned, has been significant. Who would have thought that actually entire airlines would actually ground their aircraft 100% with no flights going anywhere? Now, here's another important fact that actually Dr. Khanna mentioned in his book and also previously in some of his slides, is we tend to forget that actually airlines don't only carry passengers. In most of the commercial flights, also there's a lot of cargo in the belly of the aircraft that actually, carry essentials for population on islands like yours and others who require it to actually just have, substance things to actually eat and products. For those of you who are expecting the iPhone 12, you might have to wait for a bit longer because parts are actually not being shipped and etc. I mean, this is just one device out of many other millions and millions of things that actually we buy that we consume on a regular basis or not now actually not being able to ship. The other important fact also to remember is that tourism, we tend to think of tourism as flights, hotels, and tours. But the indirect of the travel and tourism sector are significant. That number that I quoted before, the 2.7 trillion of losses, also encompasses some of these other aspects of travel and tourism. the farmers who produce food who will be consumed on your island by the tourists have no one to sell it to anymore. The people making craft in the villages and different communities, they don't have anybody to sell it to. The taxi drivers, as I mentioned before, here in Thailand or anywhere else around the world, have less people to carry and travel. We took a short 1 week domestic holiday. I just literally came back yesterday from our holiday. And the taxi driver we had in the city of Hua Hin, which is about 2.5 hour or 3 hour drive, depending on traffic, away from here. I'm not seeing actually tourists for a very long time. He was so happy that we actually called him to just get to a short 5-6 kilometers away from where we were, because he had not had any business for weeks. He has no money to provide for his family and etc. And then so the impact is, as I mentioned, is enormous. Again, just to show some numbers before we move on to something else, and then we'll talk about the recovery in a minute, hopefully something a little more positive. But in terms of impact and reductions of travel, the average globally is 97.1% year-on-year drop in travel, 97.1%. And you look at the average from each part of the world, it's about the same. Asia, actually, Africa, Middle East, a little bit worse, 98.4. But essentially, it's about 95, 96, 97% in terms of drop, which is enormous. I wanted to keep the slide and specifically because it also talks about the future bookings. And this is actually for Sam, who works for United and others in the sector. This is probably actually the most important slide that we all want to know, is where are the bookings coming back? And you can see the numbers, it's actually below 100%. And some people have asked me before, how could it be below 100%? It is below because actually people are not actually not booking anymore. They're canceling their bookings. They're canceling their future bookings. If they were planning to take a holiday this summer or in the fall, well, they're not at the moment. They're actually canceling these trips. So this is actually why the numbers actually show a drop below the 100% in terms of bookings. Now you can see that it's taking a little bit of a V shape. It's starting to come back. Future bookings are gradually coming back in some parts of the world. In Europe, for example, where traditionally people from Northern Europe go to the south for their summer holidays, have gone and have traveled, but not as much as they did in previous years. But they are gradually coming back. Domestic tourism is actually being increasing in many destinations enormously. Here in Thailand, our borders are actually still technically closed. Only business travel and medical travel is allowed at the moment with very limited numbers. However, domestic travel has picked up enormously. The day that the government actually allowed people to cross essentially borders out of the city or to other provinces, bookings for domestic tourism skyrocketed. It was difficult to actually get a place in a beach resort over the last couple of weeks, and we waited a long time to get our holiday last week to be able to actually able to go. And over the next couple of weeks, the hotel we stayed said their bookings are actually doing really well. But again, domestic, mostly expatriates or locals taking a short long weekend away or a week holiday domestically. Instead of doing their annual trip to Europe, they're actually staying here as we did. Other countries are actually seeing the same thing. Big focus on domestic tourism for the time being. This is actually the slide I wanted to refer to, which is in intra-Europe, as we see the increase before in terms of booking. You can see that the booking numbers and the percentages are actually improving. I mean, when I say improving, it's still in the negative, but it is actually gradually getting better, and it's mostly driven by domestic or intra-regional travel in Europe, for example, at the moment. TripAdvisor did this piece of research and actually coincide very much with some of the same thinking that JATA has put together. The United Nations World Tourism Organization, the World Travel and Tourism Council has done also. There are actually 5 stages in terms of the recovery. There's first actually the decline. The news and concern spread rapidly, people being practicing social distancing, and travels are actually declining. We've passed that. Plateau, potential travelers stay inside to ensure safety and help flatten the curve. Well, different parts of the world are at this level at the moment with current lockdowns. The emergence, as the crisis begins to pass, lockdowns restrictions begin to ease and people venture out. Domestic tourism, which is the space where we are here in Thailand at the moment, and then international travel and trans-border travel is not currently happening for most part of the world. What we've certainly learned over the last couple of weeks is that we go back and forth into these different recovery stages at different times. As you can see, or you heard in the news, in Europe, in Australia, and other parts of the world, people are going back into lockdown at the moment in certain cities and provinces as the situation keeps recurring. So we go back to number 2 and number 3 of the crisis before we'll go back to domestic. What actually this does tell us is that international cross-border travel is still far, long away from us. I prepared these slides before I left for the holiday a week ago, and obviously things in the last just 4 days have changed enormously already. There was discussions of bubbles or corridors. I had Thailand and Vietnam here. Well, I'm sure you read about the situation in Vietnam at the moment. Has changed completely overnight in the space of a few days, being one of the few countries in the world that was almost COVID-free. Now actually have a resurgence of cases, and now they're actually sending back all the tourists home at the moment. So concept of a bubble, they actually may work. They're very challenging to put together. It takes a long time. It's a very complicated process of negotiations and bilateral agreements between countries, and learning to trust the healthcare systems and etc. But then you end up in a situation like we are here at the moment in Vietnam and Thailand, and say, well, maybe that bubble needs to be closed again, although it hasn't opened yet. So there are a lot of reconsiderations being done. So travel bubbles are certainly something to think about, but they're actually challenges. Sorry, I'm trying to move to the next slide. I'm having some challenges. Thank you. As we're getting to the close, I wanted to also talk about technology and the roadmap to restarting tourism. These are all actually things that protocols and processes that various destinations around the world have either already put in place or are looking at putting in place. Contact tracing, temperature screening, physical distancing, use of PPE equipment, of course, cleaning and sanitizing, testing, immunity passport, touchless border controls, transfer screenings, and etc. Most destinations around the world have already established their protocols or about to. Protocols to ensure the safety of the people traveling within the destinations. Here in Thailand, we have a program called SHA, Safety Health Authority have put a program together. The hotel where we stayed had implemented it. It worked perfectly fine. Everyone was respecting the rules and etc. Wear your mask, use sanitizers, and scanning of QR codes as we enter and exit different places and etc. But I also see this as an opportunity, as Dr. Khanna mentioned before, because a lot of the technologies that we were talking about before COVID-19, that for some of us might have appeared like science fiction, are actually now being implemented and accelerated before. 5G network, which is Docomo is implementing now in Guam. We talk about touchless check-in at airports, at hotels, and etc. Touchless screens. We're talking about drone deliveries. We're talking about autonomous cars. We're talking about renewable energy. All of these are being accelerated. So for me, I'm actually quite happy with this because I see things that I thought were really needed for our world to move forward to implement. Now I have a chance to implement it more rapidly. I also think for Guam, it's a fantastic opportunity. You're a relatively small island with about a population of about 168,000 people. It's a dream place to implement and test new technologies, implementing renewable energy, electric vehicles on the island, looking at touchless technology, virtual assistants, 5G network coming on board, you now have the ability to implement these technologies probably faster than any other destination can. And so it would be a fantastic test ground for new technologies. And also, as Dr. Khanna mentioned, a fantastic opportunity for Guam also to develop into new services beyond just tourism also, but being a technology center for the region. You are the closest point of entry to the US from Asia. You're literally just next door to us, you're our neighbors, compared to the mainland, of course, which is far, far away. So you've got a fantastic opportunity to try new things, and I hope that you take advantage of that. If someone can help me to move to the next screen, thank you. In closing, I just want to talk very briefly for a minute, because I know I'm over my time, about the Crisis Resource Center, which is PATA put together with the assistance of the Asian Development Bank and the German government. Just a few weeks ago, it was released literally just less than 2 weeks ago. The Crisis Center has a number of tools available for businesses, not only within the tourism sector, to help with the recovery. There are toolkits that are easy to download. You can apply your own brand to it. You can actually follow in terms of crisis communications as well as recovery communications. And they're fantastic tools for any businesses of any size, not only SMEs, for government, as well as large businesses to use. There are actually no fees, that you don't have to be a PATA member to use these tools. So I would highly encourage all of you to go and visit the site and use whatever you need, share it with your colleagues if need be, to help you with that recovery, and send us feedback. If you see other opportunity for us to expand on this tool, we'd be happy to do so. I'll stop here because I know I've actually right over time. So thank you very much.
One quick question before we lose you. I know that you mentioned this Crisis Resource Center that was partially funded by the ADB. Guam has a challenge as well as for funding. In fact, the GVB is going before the legislature today to talk about their budget. Is there any financing or funding available to Guam from the likes of the ADB?
Sadly or unfortunately, Guam is a U.S. territory and therefore actually doesn't fall under the Asian Development Bank's portfolio of countries that they actually supply aid money. But there is actually other organizations that potentially could assist. USAID would obviously be one of them, but also some of the United Nations organizations who may be able to assist in the development of Guam moving forward. So there are other organizations similar to ADB who may be able to assist in that time, and be happy to talk to SAM or to ADB, to GVB about that in more detail.
I'm sure the GVB would be very interested in any sort of funding that they can get at this particular point. Thank you, Dr. Mario Hardy. And moving on to our next speaker, he is Junichi Jakumata, JTB Tourism Research and Consulting, Executive Director and Chief Research Officer and Head of the Global Tourism Agenda. Jack Kumada-san has worked as a tour operator in Japan for over 20 years and has accumulated the experiences and knowledge, especially related to Japan-bound tourism activities. He joined JTB Corp in 1992 following his graduation from Meiji University. He also worked at United Nations World Tourism Organizations as the senior officer at regional program for Asia and the Pacific to assist the member states and the UN WTO affiliate members in Asia and the Pacific region. Now he has been assigned as Chief Research Officer since April 2017 in Tokyo. Welcome, Hamada-san. Proceed with your presentation.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
Ohayou gozaimasu.
And I would like to extend a warm greeting from Tokyo. It's 1 hour ahead of 1 hour after the Guam time, I think. I'm trying to deliver the practical information how to reconnect Guam and Japan, since we are also the middle of the hustlings to regain the back to the, I should say, new normal in the tourism sectors and in domestic beforehand either domestic tourism, but of course, we are try to reopening the border and also the try to send the Japanese tourists to the overseas destinations. As you may some of know that the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs just mentioned last week, I think, July 22nd, I think, 12 destination and countries is a kind of a next region and also the destination reopening the tourism traffic basically in the business travel first, but it will be relaying to the leisure travel as well, and also the Hawaii under the United States territory will be also the another the next the targeted destinations to reconnect the in the tourism sectors as well. So it should be the one of the clues to reconnect some between the Guam and Japan for the those Hawaii case as well. So what I would like to deliver today is the I briefly would like to introduce the how the Japan tourism established the Japanese travel protocol first. So that means the tourist experience has to be consistent, and what the Japanese tourist feels comfortable should be also remain same as the at the destination. So I just would like to share how the Japanese Travel Association established those protocol on the ground, and also the latter part. I would like to introduce some Japanese travel demand forecast to what would be the challenge and what would be the solutions we can just solve together. Okay. This is my brief introduction, which thank you very much for my introductions. I'm very honored. And first of all, briefly, as of June 30th, this is an update from JTB Corporation's new board member of JTB Corporation is just changed. Mr. Hiromi Tagawa, he was the chairman of the JATA, but he just shifted to the executive advisor of the JTB. He still remained as the kind of advisor of JATA as well for next year, but he took over his positions to Mr. Takahashi. He was the ex-president of JTB, and new president of CEO is Mr. Eijiro Yamakita. He used to work at the JTB Europe as a presidency, and also he's the chairman of the Kuoni of JTB for many years. So it's kind of a shifting to the trend to catching up the global tourism market as a JTB itself. So as of the June 30, this is brief information. And Mr. Tagawa will also continue to serve as the vice chairman of WTTC until this September, and Mr. Takahashi will take over his position of the WTTC as well. And regarding towards the recovery of domestic and overseas and inbound tourism, we have the two main approach, which is one of those is the Japan Domestic Travel Protocol. We are working through the JATA, and we have some commissions to build the new protocols in the tourism sectors. What kind of the protocol each employees has to do in the store or in the operations. And another thing is also the international travel protocols. We are working through the WTTC. JTB has been supporting the WTTC leading global protocol for the new normal. which is a kind of a global platform for the of the tourism protocol globally, I think. And the field would be the tour operators and aviation, hospitality, airport, convention center, meeting and events, and outdoor shoppings, and rent-a-car and more. So this would be the kind of some great reference to introduce some to improve your protocol as well. And this is a kind of JATA's basic installation of the protocol in the store. So if you refer when the business in the tourism sector, Guam, implement some methodology or protocol in each facility, this would be the kind of a minimum standards which the Japanese travelers feel comfortable. Basically, they follow the local protocols and guideline, and the regular disinfections and hand sanitizer installation, physical distance 2 meters, at least 1 meter, queuing carefree, less touch on the brochure, and adjustment of the number of the people, and also the partition for the prevention of the droplet infections. Those kind of a minimum standards in the store. And also the JATA also has a guideline for the employees, guidelines, goggling, wash hands, wearing the mask, health check daily. If they feel, uncomfortable, has to stay home policy, and wash uniforms. And also the business style is a little bit transitions to the remote work, contactless, the communications, which since we are the kind of technological, country, though the remote work is not so advanced, unfortunately, but we are now starting to catch up. So recently, the famous, I should say infamous, the crowded train for the commuting in the Tokyo district is now gone. There is no kind of, phenomena at this moment, but recently a little bit coming back. But the working style, which I just did do at home right now, is a kind of a remote work, or in-person communication, shifted to the online communications, and also the payment would be, we rather prefer to use the cash, but now also the online payments is implemented. So that kind of, the movement is happening in Japan market. So maybe the Docomo can also support in to enhance those experience at this stage. And also, this is the kind of spots which the JATA recommendation for the disinfection and sterilizations in the shared equipment and facility. Handrail, doorknobs, and table and chair would be, the kind of mandatory, and even the button of this facility, elevators, lights, and etc. And water tap, toilet seats and lid, and trash cans, and telephone headsets, keyboard, mouse pen, a touch pen, and tablets, which is a kind of occasions frequently the clients and also the employee will share those kind of equipment. So this is the points the JATA instructed to clean up. And also this is one of the famous catchphrase, could be one of the trend words of the in Japanese we say sanmitsu, which is san means 3, mitsu is a kind of close. So we should say avoiding 3 C's: closed space, crowded place, and close contact setting. This is the kind of a catchphrasing the governments try to enlighten the people to avoid these kind of circumstances. So maybe when the tour operators and the hotels, also restaurants owner set some kind of occasion for the hospitality, then you should concern about this kind of occasions. So avoid 3 C's, sanmitsu. And this is also the the governments and also the travel associations also try to publish some kind of, and like the travelers, protocol as well for the, not only for the business and also the employee, but for the travelers. So they created some kind of a brochure to disseminate the kind of how to behave in the destinations, to provide some kind of a safetyness on the for the residents and the also the destinations. This is one of the kind of a good approach to make the tourism sector back to normal. You can download this from the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure's website. This one. And lastly, I just would like to briefly mention about the market trend. The JTB Tourism Research and Consulting just did some survey. This is a survey in the April, so it's a little bit, sorry, this is May survey. So it's a little bit, a little bit behind, but the domestic traveling intentions, July, August, this month is a kind of a, the people would like to travel during the summer. But for the overseas international travel intentions should be starting from the September. We have some big consecutive holiday, and what we call Silver Holiday Week, which is centered by the Aging Day holiday. So the third week of the September would be the one of the kind of key day to restart the leisure travel. And also the November, December, end of the year market would be also the people who would like to start the holiday. And also the destination-wise, Hawaii and Europe are still popular destinations for the overseas travel. And mainland USA status may affect on Hawaii maybe, but the Guam and Taiwan are flipping back. So which is the kind of closer destinations, maybe the more interested by the Japanese tourists. And also the my last slide would be the kind of challenges. We just delivered the question, why are you currently considering without confirming the booking for that trip? Multiple answer. And the unconfidence is one of the key, which is not able to move freely as previously, which probably the communications between the destination and the market is not sufficient. And also the uncertainty to receive the same level of the service and also the enjoyment as previously. So this is another the communication issue, and also the circumstances also may affect, since the Japanese society is a kind of aging society. So we live together with the senior the grandfather and grandmother. So if the young people is okay, but if they coming back to the from the travel, and they just worried about the some kind of infections to the senior persons, and then the senior person just a warning about the not to travel this time. So that kind of communication would be very challenging things. But in that case, the mass media communication would be a very good effect through the TV or radio, which is accessible to the senior person. So that could be my some kind of clue. Thank you very much for the listening, and I hope to work together soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Komada-san. I do have a question. Recently, we understand that Japan and Hawaii have agreed to a bubble and Guam is also trying to kind of sort of establish that same sort of thing, same sort of agreement whereby other low-risk markets, we establish an arrangement. What are your recommendations for a bubble between Guam and Japan? As Japan, as you know, is one of our key markets.
Basically, those kind of circumstances for the medical circumstances should be stable. That would be the main priority. But of course, some kind of methodology for the tracking systems, and also especially for the Japanese market, the quarantine is the kind of a keys to if the Guam governments can waive those kind of 14 days quarantine, as well as Japanese governments has to do the same things. That would be the mandatories to restart the those kind of traffic for the especially for the point of view of the Japanese tourists.
Yeah, and Mario on the chat also mentioned the importance of maybe adopting. Guam has adopted or is guided by the Centers for Disease Control protocols, and I think many of those same protocols are also implemented in Japan. And so, as you mentioned, you think that is very important for Japanese travelers to know that?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I totally agree.
All right, thank you so much, Kawada-san.
Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
We're going to move on to our next speaker, and that is Sam Shinohara, United Airlines Managing Director of Airport Operations for Asia Pacific. Sam is responsible for all of United's airport operations across the Asia Pacific region. He has held multiple roles at United, including regional leadership positions in sales and finance. Sam has served on the GVB board since 2015 and is the current board treasurer and chairman for the New Markets Development and Destination Management, Visitor Safety and Satisfaction Committees. He serves on the board of Guam Sports Events, which organizes the United Airlines Guam Marathon, and has served on the boards of the Make-A-Wish Foundation Guam and the Foundation for Public Education. Half a day, Sam.
Day and good morning, everyone. As you can see from that video, the travel experience on United Airlines has drastically changed from start to finish. But these changes aren't subtle, and they're not half-baked. They're certainly meaningful changes that are going to make the air travel safer, and they're going to help us reduce the spread of COVID. These changes are made possible through our partnership with Clorox and the Cleveland Clinic, and we're proud to be working with them to roll out United Clean Plus, which is basically United's industry-leading program that puts your health and safety at the forefront of the travel journey. And today, my presentation is going to cover what connecting people and uniting the world means in the new travel paradigm. Safety is always top of mind here at United Airlines. And so in the new environment, it was important we partnered with the best in the business when it comes to sanitizing. And arguably, there's no one better than Clorox when it comes to disinfecting. So working with Clorox and the Cleveland Clinic, we've implemented a variety of new safety protocols to make the travel experience healthier and safer for our employees and our customers alike. And while we've rolled out a fairly robust product with United Clean Plus, we're continuing our work with these partners to help enhance our processes even further. And last week, we had the opportunity to partner with GBB and the Guam airport to show our industry partners, our friends in the media and lawmakers, what the new travel experience looks like. We thought it was going to be important for us to share with the community and our source markets what the industry is doing to make the travel experience safer for everyone that passes through Guam's airport. That's why it's really nice to hear some of that feedback from Kamada-san and Mario on all of the things that we're doing. On the airport front, they've really implemented a ton of new processes to help all visitors and residents stay COVID-free, from sanitizing cards to temperature screening, social distancing markers throughout the facility, touchless hand sanitizers, enhanced cleaning procedures, in addition to an increased volume of cleaners throughout the airport facility. The airport is certainly doing their part. At United, our Clean Plus program is front and center of the travel journey. And we start the process by asking every customer to fill out a ready-to-fly checklist. And on this checklist is a reminder that facial coverings are a mandatory item throughout the travel journey. And we remind customers to bring their face mask with them to the airport. And if a customer shows up without a mask, we offer them one. And if they don't want to wear one, it's not a problem. It's just they won't be flying on United, because all reputable health organizations indicate that a mask makes a difference in the spread of COVID. So we've taken the lead in making this a required item for all of our customers over the age of 2, and certainly for all of our employees here at the workplace. In addition to the ready-to-fly checklist, the checklist takes passengers through a self-assessment to ensure all travelers are free of COVID symptoms prior to starting the check-in process. And we're encouraging all of our customers to download the United app so they can experience a touchless check-in process. So all a customer has to do when coming to the airport is scan their mobile device at our kiosk and then load their bags onto the scale, all with the comfort of knowing that a sneeze barrier is protecting them and our agents to keep them safe. The gate experience is also touchless, and we've revamped our boarding process to board from the rear of the airplane, minimizing the cross-mingling of passengers during the boarding process. And while each and every one of our flights is cleaned thoroughly prior to departure and further disinfected with an electrostatic sprayer, our flight attendants are handing out disinfecting wipes to each customer as an additional precautionary measure if customers want to further wipe down their seating area. Throughout the flight, customers are expected to utilize their mask, and failure to comply will lead to deplaning of the customer or suspension of their travel privileges on United Airlines. And for those customers that are concerned about the spread of the virus on the airplane, I'm really proud to share with you that United has implemented the use of HEPA filters on all of our airplanes. And the design and flow of the air on an aircraft is such that air is pumped into the airplane every 2 to 3 minutes and eliminates 99.9% of all particles in the air. In short, the air on a United airplane is likely much cleaner than the air you breathe in any grocery store, restaurant, or anywhere else that you might be working, and probably cleaner than the air you're breathing right now. This next slide is a really ugly chart, and it's an ugly chart for so many reasons, but largely because it illustrates the reduced number of passengers that we're carrying. We are carrying on a daily basis versus 2019. And as you can see, in 2019, we were carrying well over 500,000 passengers each day in the summer. And that started to dwindle beginning in March of 2020, when global travel advisories were pushed out. Volumes just fell to between 50,000 and peaked at near 100,000 in June and July. And while June and July was certainly an improvement over April and May numbers, we're still down nearly 80% year over year. As a result of reduced demand for air travel, we've reduced our global capacity commensurately. And these reductions have helped us to reduce our daily cash burn rate of close to $120 million in March, down to about just $40 million today. And as you can see on the chart, we're close to down just about 90% in April, May, and June, and slightly under 80% for July. But aside from our capacity reductions and efforts to reduce expense, and Mario touched on this on his presentation for sure, we're capitalizing heavily on the unprecedented cargo demand across the globe. And believe it or not, Guam has served a vital role in satisfying that demand. Guam has significant strategic importance to the network of United Airlines and has served as a launching pad for cargo missions to Singapore, Manila, Hong Kong, Taipei, Chengdu, and Shanghai. All of these markets we serve on a regular basis and on multiple frequencies today. In addition to our passenger flights to both Narita and Honolulu are highly subsidized because of the cargo needs in and out of Guam. And while cargo has been helpful in reducing our cash burn, United is a passenger service airline at heart, and we want to rebuild our network. And Guam's tourist industry right now relies on three key source markets: Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And together, these countries represent over 90% of Guam's total visitor arrivals each year. And all three of these countries have weathered the COVID storm very well. But air travel is still a challenge due to the entry and exit restrictions that are currently imposed in both directions. But the industry is working to promote Guam as a safe destination for those healthy and confident to travel for a short getaway. And Guam is in an ideal spot for those destinations that are just 3 to 5 hours away. In addition to the tourism industry, United serves as the lifeline for the FSM, the RMI, and Palau. And these quote-unquote lifeline markets have shut their borders down for the past several months. And while we are unable to deplane passengers in any of these markets today, and as a result, United's operation to these destinations has just been limited to 1 or 2 flights a month, just to help get passengers out of the FSM, the RMI, and Palau. But as Guam's hometown airline, we're working hard to connect our customers and help unite the world once again. And we're looking forward to increasing our flight activity to and from Japan. And beginning in August, we're increasing our midday Japan flights from 5 times a week up to daily flights. And we're adding morning flights to Japan 3 times a week. So we'll be serving Guam to Japan 10 times a week going forward, starting in August. And we'll continue to offer regular service to Honolulu and Saipan, and we're going to do our best to satisfy the critical transport needs in Micronesia. You know, a good friend asked me yesterday if I was excited about the presentation today, and I wasn't really sure how to answer that question. But this morning when I woke up, I realized that what I'm feeling is anxiousness. And not anxiousness about the presentation or presenting for everybody, but anxiousness to get Guam's visitor industry back on track. You know, I'm very eager to reopen our island to visitors because tourism works for Guam, and we're not going to make the mistake that's been made across the globe. We're not going to be cavalier in our efforts to reopen the island. You know, we're going to go out of our way to do it better. We're going to do it responsibly, and we're going to do it in consort with the doctors and medical professionals, and we're going to do it relying on science, and we're going to make smart decisions to do the best thing for Guam going forward. And I'm committed to working with everyone to do just that. But I wanted to end by saying Sidus Masi and thank you to everyone who participated today, including the great presenters that we had so far. And I want to offer special thanks to Rod and the entire DOCOMO team for organizing this webinar series. You know, we really are better together. And I hope we can all work together to reopen Guam responsibly, because I think so many people are counting on us to do just that. And, you know, I just want to say thanks again for giving me the opportunity to present today. And if we have some time, I'd love to take some questions, Nestor.
Jusmasi, Sam, we do have a question. Do you have any additional thoughts on how to most effectively lift travel restrictions between Guam and its main source markets?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, there are a bunch of things that are happening across the industry, and certainly GVB is at the forefront. But honestly, we've been spending a lot of time with the Physicians Advisory Group that is spending a lot of their effort donating their time to advise the governor on the right way to reopen Guam, and we've been working with them to do things smartly. But I think it's what Kamada-san said and what Mario hinted on, right? And it's about being responsible, as we reopen the island. And I think the new normal is something that's very different. We are certainly on uncharted territory. A face mask, I think every day of your life is certainly going to be a requirement going forward until such time we find a vaccine. I think people doing the responsible thing, and I think, avoiding the 3 C's that Kamada-san mentioned, I think those are things that are going to help us. But I think our case rate on Guam certainly bodes us for being a great destination to be considered as a low-risk place to visit. I think we need to go out of our way to communicate to our source markets, as Mario indicated, what we're doing to make travel safer in our particular part of the world. What the whole Guam community is doing, what we're doing at the hotels and our tour operators, and just all of the social distancing protocols that have been deployed the island. I think those are the smartest ways to do things. I know there's a lot of conversation about testing, and I think the challenge with implementing wholesale testing across the markets for any visitor or residents alike is, there isn't consensus as to, number one, what the right test is or where it should be done. And there are different horror stories across the globe that, people standing in line for 10 hours just to get a COVID test. And so, until we figure out a consistent standard protocol acceptable to all of the governments across the world, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for us, but I think Guam is ready for it. And we're looking forward to welcoming the first batch of tourists.
Yeah, just one more question, Sam. You had a very excellent presentation on all of the sanitation efforts and protocols that United has adopted from the time you check in to the time you deplane. Do you think those are protocols that will meet the liking of our visitors from Japan, the ones that Kamada-san mentioned, and South Korea and Taiwan?
Yeah, hey, Nestor, great question. I think so. The more we educate our partners about what we're doing, I think the more impressed they are at all of the additional measures that we've been deploying to make the travel experience safer for everybody. I can't tell you how many people we took on the tour at the airport, but the feedback from the participants has been great so far. And I think some people are really surprised at what we've been doing and the investments we're making, to make it cleaner and safer for everybody. So yes, I think it's certainly going to help in our proposal to our visitors.
All right, Yusmasi, Sam. Moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Annette Tyron, the Dean of the School of Business and Public Administration for the University of Guam. Dr. Santos is the Dean, as I mentioned, at the School of Business at UOG. She has over 25 years of combined faculty and administrator experience in higher education. She has served in many leadership capacities, such as inaugural president of the Rotary E-Club of Pago Bay, chair of the Notre Dame High School Board of Directors, president of Local First Guam, Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce Board. She was recognized as one of Guam's 25 most influential women and was nominated for the 2012 First Hawaiian Bank Businesswoman of the Year Award and 2017 Guam Executive of the Year Award. Dr. Santos, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Half a day. I'd like to express my appreciation to Rod and the DOCOMO team for hosting this very relevant webinar. My respect and admiration to our keynote speaker, Dr. Kana, and the lineup of speakers before me, Dr. Hardy, Kamada-san, and Sam Shinohara. The speakers certainly have painted a picture of the current environment and provided important insights of the travel industry landscape. And the challenging question before us is, how will the tourism industry survive the pandemic? Closer to home, how will Guam survive? And what are each of us called to do in this effort? And to start, I want to paint a picture of our current environment from the conversations that I've had with people that I've been meeting with, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. But across the world, the tourism industry was the hardest hit And it was one of the first sectors to be shut down and may probably be one of the last sectors that will be allowed to open up. The impact of the coronavirus crisis is being felt across the entire tourism ecosystem. The economic and social impact on Guam has been unprecedented. Approximately 38,000 people have been economically displaced, and that's roughly 23% of Guam's total population. In a few short months, Guam experienced a loss of more than 20% of its gross domestic product, due mostly in part to the halt of tourism. And tourism as the main industry for the island made this a grave concern. At present, only one airline continues to operate with limited services, but I'm glad to hear that we're opening it up in the next month. And other airlines express great hesitancy to resume services again. Almost 70% of Guam's small businesses have received pandemic loan relief. A large number of businesses remain closed, including some notable franchises. And referencing a July 14 article, it reported a total of $195.5 million of pandemic unemployment assistance payments were made on Guam, with $16 million of that going to taxes. So the total economic impact of this pandemic is yet to be fully realized. We see the phased reopening of the island economy, and it continues to experience results of positive cases, which I'm glad to see are pretty low, but they still cause caution and feel concerned over a potential second wave. And this second wave scenario is expected to be exponentially disastrous to the welfare of the island people and an already crippled economy that's heavily reliant on outside connectivity and contact. As the island slowly begins to reopen, the realities become clear that there is more uncertainty. Estimates put this pandemic to last at least another 18 months. The island will continue to suffer under this state, and never has there been a greater need to engage than now. So, trying to get this slide. Okay. Could I get the next slide, please? So, how do we respond? The story begins when things shut down. A group of local business leaders began to assemble in search of solutions toward business recovery. In early April 2020, when the island of Guam was more than a month into a pandemic lockdown and the world was forced to cope with new realities, it was during this time that a number of Guam small businesses and nonprofits joined forces with the University of Guam and members of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors to come up with a plan to reopen Guam safely. And we recognize that this would be a long-term recovery in relation to the devastating impact that was brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. The group's purpose extended into a complementary hub that would serve as a nexus for public-private partnership, talent resource synergy, and community engagement. This was an organic, community-driven effort that was born out of a sincere desire to help the people of Guam and the region. And our group was committed to assuring its community that in the midst of these new environmental conditions, it was working tirelessly to instill in our community and our visitors the confidence that their safety and well-being are foremost in our efforts. The small businesses that led this charge for business recovery are noteworthy to mention, and they include the Guam Premier Outlet, New Tech Guam Corporation, Market Research and Development, Valley of the Latte LLC, Cocoa Hut, Paradise Awnings, ISU Guam Inc., RIMS Inc., 1111 Design and Development, Flame Tree Freedom Center, and Next Generation LLC. Together, a comprehensive community partnership was established. Next slide, please. And could you click to the end of the slide? Thank you. So through this partnership, a multiplier force was formed and is expected to build or result in a comprehensive partnership to help businesses and the community regain the confidence and skills needed to maximize the speed and quality of Guam's pandemic resistance propensity. So for selfish reasons, I'd like to focus on the University of Guam for a little bit, if you don't mind taking us to the next slide. So why did these business partners come to UOG? I'd like to think of the University of Guam as a force multiplier of local synergy, positioned to address critical issues through evidence-based research and analysis. The University of Guam, by its very nature, is strategically positioned as the honest knowledge broker. It is intent on communicating high-quality, unbiased research to policymakers, our government leaders, and business managers. And by the way, the University of Guam's the only four-year U.S. accredited institution of higher learning in the Western Pacific region and has over 70 years of regional influence. I'd like to think that our business community recognizes what UOG brings to the table. UOG is probably in the best position to leverage best practices and optimize community buy-in by leveraging the expertise of its faculty, its students, and its alumni through its diverse curriculum, research capacity, the community impacts, and action orientation. Earlier this year, UOG launched its new strategic plan called Patahulu, which means ever upwards. And this will lead our way for the next 5 years in its aim to transform lives and advance communities, and how appropriate to the current times. And so through this new strategic plan, UOG seeks to empower the region by uniting wisdom with universal sources of enlightenment to support exceptional education, discovery, and service that respect and benefit local and global communities. So I think it's apropos that UOG play a key role in Guam's recovery efforts alongside the leaders in government and business, as well as advocates at the local and regional levels. Next slide, please. Or this is good, thank you. So together, here's what we were able to accomplish over a series of early Friday morning meetings. In joining forces, the University of Guam, alongside its partners in business and government, we ventured on a path committed to a recovery plan for Guam that resulted in 4 primary outcomes. One would be a Guam recovery website. 2, a Guam Safe Certificate program. 3, a source market research initiative. And 4, safety application software. And I'd like to briefly just touch on what each of these encompass. So the first goal for the Guam Recovery website was to establish a portal for a secured and verified depository of curated information and data related to the coronavirus pandemic that would be stored, organized, stored, and analyzed at the University of Guam. A system would then be designed to determine the manner in which public and private data and information will be vetted and distributed across all Guam Recovery partner outlets. We were able to realize this goal early on, in large part to the credit of Adam Tidinko, who developed the guamrecovery.com website. And this website was set up to be a one-stop resource for all local businesses, members of the community, and guests of the island to find updates, news, announcements, access to resources, and gateway to a network and directory of island-centric information. The information portal was envisioned to serve as a foundation for economic recovery, instilling a level of confidence that Guam is a safe and desired travel destination for our island residents and our international markets. The website, I'm happy to say, was endorsed by Governor Leon Guerrero, Imaga Haga Guahan. The second goal was to produce a Guam Safe Certificate program. And this would be a UOG certificate program for local businesses. Participating businesses would be able to display the certificate in visible areas to promote assurances to residents and visitors that the business has adopted not only safe practices, but practices that reflect the customer service values and priorities of the local people. The certificate promotes measures for safe practices crafted from worldwide and locally developed approaches with island-centric frameworks. The certificate is being designed to align with standards and goals of the World Trade and Tourism Council, Guam's Public Health and Social Services, the Guam Visitors Bureau, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the World Health Organizations, among other leading standards. The Guam Safe Certified recognition is meant to showcase that a business and or organization is highly committed to safety. The third goal encompasses source market research for disaster recovery. The research study seeks to create a baseline data set of both business and consumer and resident and visitor attitudes and behavior. The information gleaned from the research will be used to directly inform businesses of ways to incorporate strategies to pursue their specific business interests. The research will include opinions and views of Guam residents, Guam businesses, travelers from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, as well as the travel industries of the said source markets. The research will also identify expectations of Guam residents to help modulate and help to shape best practices in keeping our local people safe and encouraging them to venture out into the local market. The fourth goal encompasses a safety application software development, a super app. This application is envisioned to include a number of fundamental features such as geospatial and artificial technology to help minimize and manage the spread of the virus or any other future public safety threats to allow for an expeditious containment. Together with public-private partners from across the globe, some members of our team are currently engaged in an ever-evolving contact tracing app pilot program that involves a PathCheck Google Apple exposure notification solution, which is a full open source system for deploying a customizable mobile app, and also a production-ready exposure notification service that's based on the Google open source project. So this continues to be a work in progress. So how have we moved forward from there? These initiatives will require funding. And we're already confronted with challenges just trying to make sure that we're up to date, even with the website portal. So we applied for the technical assistance grant through the Office of Insular Affairs, Department of Interior. And just a couple of days ago, we were sadly informed that our project was not eligible under the CARES Act funding. So our project was not deemed relevant because it didn't meet the preparation, prevention, and response to COVID-19. And the funds can't be used for recovery projects. So it's about semantics. So we're exploring other funding options and open to recommendations or offers. Meanwhile, we continue to work together towards supporting Guam's recovery efforts. We recognize that through our regular Friday meetings and collective efforts, we experience a rich exchange of diversified thoughts and ideas. Our different experiences widens the scope of opportunities and possibilities, and our hope for a better future allows us to lean on each other when the conditions are harsh and challenging. And because we are resilient, we have an unstoppable energy because we're stronger together. And we will keep at it. This is our story of how partnerships can be forged out of survival and the value of working together to rebuild our tourism industry and restoring our island's economic well-being. Thank you so much, and Sizus Maasi.
Dr. Santos, we do have a question for you. How can we reconcile the long-term health and economic risks associated with Guam's current travel restrictions versus the immediate-term health and economic impacts?
So that's a great question, and I think when we look at recovery efforts, it's important for us to consider those basic needs. That is, ensuring that there is a health strategy in place to protect the public health, and that we also simultaneously have to address the economic impacts. So rather than operating in silos, there needs to be a collaborative approach to this process of recovery. So we have our folks in the public health sector ensuring that all the standard protocols are being followed and are in place. And simultaneously, we have partners in the community identifying strategies to get Guam back on its feet and to restore some of those activities that help to fuel our economy.
Thank you, Dr. Santos. Appreciate that. And now, last but not least, our final speaker today is Roderick Boss. Rod is currently the president and CEO of Docomo Pacific in Guam. Prior to joining Docomo Pacific, he held senior positions at Manpower Group in the US, Japan, and the Philippines. Before Manpower Group, he was the president and CEO of Pacific Crossing Limited. That is the owner and operator of a subsea fiber optic telecommunications cable system in the Pacific. Rod spent a total of 18 years living and working in Japan at a variety of telecom companies, including Powerband Communications, J-Phone International Digital Communications, AirTouch International, and Vodafone. He started his telecom career at AT&T, where he worked in Tokyo, New York, and New Jersey, and now he's on Guam. Welcome, Rod. It's all yours.
Hafaday. I'd like to first thank the speakers that we've heard today. I've been impressed by their knowledge and the perspective on, I think, some very relevant topics for each of us in our businesses, and particularly on how we can adapt to re-energize our travel economy in Guam. It's also great to be part of this virtual webinar that showcases our ability to stay connected during this time when we're all unable to be physically together. I specifically asked to play that Rise Together spot we just watched before my remarks. Of all the great Docomo Pacific ads we've made over the years, it's my personal favorite, and I'll tell you a little more about why in a minute. It's a little bittersweet for me watching it right now, since it was originally planned as part of our Olympic sponsorship for the Tokyo 2020 Games. I was actually planning to be in Japan next week to see the final week of the games. I guess one good thing is that at least now we have another year to polish up our campaign for the 2021 games, and I've been told my tickets will transfer to next year. I moved to Guam a little over 2 years ago, although I did live here for a short time in 2011. I came here from Japan. As Nestor said in the bio, I lived there for about 18 years and raised my family there. I've now been here for a while, but there's times that I still feel like a foreigner. Until one day in late February, when we were screening the first cut of that Rise Together TVC, when it hit me. The Whanogi Chamorro, or Guam hymn, resonated with me then in a way I hadn't experienced before. And it left me with a very strong sense of what I can only call patriotism. Maybe it's having been through a lot of difficulties like typhoons and now this pandemic together with our colleagues and friends. Maybe it's my love for sport and competition, but when I first saw Rise Together spot, it was really an emotional experience for me. I hope it was for you too. Although I'm sure I'm still an outsider in a lot of people's eyes, I feel a connection to this island now that I know will last. I'm proud to be going through this challenging period in our history right here in Guam alongside all of you. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented us with a lesson in acceleration. As soon as the first cases of coronavirus were confirmed on Guam, things began to quickly change. For us at DPAC, the change has included some positives. As a fundamental part of our business, we know the value of 360-degree connectivity. In PCOR 1, mandates limited our physical contact, so we knew we had a very small window to ensure business continuity by ensuring that we were connected to our people, our systems, and our customers. DPAC was quite fortunate that the transition to work from home was immediate and really close to seamless. Of course, the health of our associates was our biggest concern, and our work from home policy was built around limiting exposure as much as possible. Our work culture is built on trust, so at DPAC, we simply trust that associates are productive and working to the best interest of the company. Some people have told me they were surprised, even now in PCOR 3, that we're still working remotely. We saw that in our remote environment, our team members, if they're not adding value, we then just work closely with them to measure their productivity and make sure they are. An issue we saw early on was that our people seemed to be working too much. A lot of them, I think, felt that since they were working out of their homes, they wanted to show that they were still productive and wanted to put in as much time as possible. With work and personal space overlapping, it's important to set expectations and to respect the division of personal and work time. We began producing a weekly newsletter where we provided managers and associates tips on working remotely, as well as tips for self-care, motivation, and mental health. Almost immediately after the shutdown, we started to work, and starting our work from home, we started to reconfigure our offices to accommodate a low or no touch environment. Glass barriers were set up between workstations and chairs were moved out of conference rooms for safe distancing. With our facilities now open, going to the office is still an option, and we continue to let each team choose how they work. We've also begun a reassessment of our entire footprint and how much physical space we really need going forward. Tools like video conferencing were already normal for most of our teams prior to work from home, so this aspect was simply enhanced. Although I know I had to quickly get better acquainted with all the features and things that I could do with my platform. Because we provide vital telecom services to the islands we serve in Guam and CNMI, some parts of our business are critical, such as our network operations. Those areas that needed on-site management were quickly reconfigured to make safe distancing possible. We consider really those network technicians and operations teams as first responders. Another area we saw risk was in our consolidated call center that serves Guam and CNMI out of our Tamaning headquarters. You can imagine the risk of COVID in a crowded indoor environment like that, but thanks to our PBX solution, we were able to fully migrate from a physical to a remote call center in just 2 days. This allowed most associates to seamlessly work from home, and in the near future, we'll actually be launching a virtual PBX and unified communication solution that basically moves all your office calling features into an app that lives on all your devices with the ability to take your number with you. Fortunately, we were using a collaboration platform based on Microsoft O365, which we started several years ago. Along with our other IT systems, we had the foundation to make work from home possible and, like I said, seamless. I was recently asked in a TV interview how our network had performed during the pandemic. There were reports of mainland operators with huge spikes in traffic from Netflix, other streaming services, and home internet use that they were having to throttle the speeds of their connectivity. Luckily, we had already been designing our network to accommodate the voice to data transition over the last several years. And even though during the shutdown, we saw about 180% increase in our fixed broadband traffic, but we had no slowdowns. Our mobile growth was not quite as high, and actually our messaging business actually declined during this shutdown. If you're curious about how our products and services work in real world environments, please just ask us. We usually adopt all of our new solutions early on for our own team's use, and I'd say that a large part of our business continuity success can be attributed to the fact that our people were equipped with the infrastructure and tools they needed to perform their roles. Microsoft 0365 was already fully developed company-wide, and our associates, of course, had mobile phones with sufficient data plans. Productivity is not limited to the office. At home, they have fast and reliable home internet, so moving to work from home became kind of plug and play after ensuring that, of course, the right levels of customer information security. Like most of you, our customers are the lifeblood of our business. We have close relationships with our customers and our vendors, and maintaining 360 communication through COVID has been critical. Our suite of telecom services allowed us to not only remain accessible, it allowed us to innovate contactless services and continue the projects we had that we were working on, especially those vital to Guam's tourism industry, like the Tsubaki Tower. On the consumer side, thanks to our partner, Bank of Guam, we were very quickly able to set up a contactless payment drive-through that is still operating behind our headquarters building. And we're now assessing whether to make that a permanent feature of our services. We were able to complete the Tsubaki Tower project in time for their soft launch earlier this month, and the hotel is powered by the Docomo Pacific Fiber Network. It's not only fast, it's redundant, which means, of course, it's reliable. There are Wi-Fi access points throughout the whole property that connect guests at all times. A side note is that Wi-Fi and free breakfast are the most requested hotel amenities. The thing that's almost as bad as no Wi-Fi is slow Wi-Fi. So we're glad that Tsubaki has our IP. It also actually has our IPTV solution in all their rooms, providing self-checkout, e-concierge, and even Apple Play. As we look forward, 360 connectivity becomes increasingly important for visitors. Keeping residents and visitors connected at all times through contact tracing apps will be critical as we continue to tackle this pandemic. We're investigating several solutions to tracing that will address privacy concerns. In the midst of all this uncertainty, as a company, we've seen the perception of telecom services become the same as other vital utilities such as power and water. I'm sure it's clear now to everyone that our connectivity is our lifeline, both in business and for our personal lives. We're committed to continuing our technology leadership and bringing the very best services to Guam and the CNMI. Some of you will be aware that last spring, we opened our 5G lab in conjunction with NTT Docomo in Japan. In the lab, we work on 5G use cases that together with both global and local companies in our open partner program. Not long after we launched the lab, one of our competitors had a big press conference and said that they would launch 5G service in the Marianas before the end of the year. I met with my network team and I told them that I saw that as a personal challenge and that we would not be beat. So we went to work and we launched our fixed 5G service in October, and wireless 5G is right around the corner. That was actually even ahead of Docomo in Japan. And still today, we're the only ones with 5G in Guam. 5G is the fifth and next generation of mobile networks. With every evolution, we see increased speeds and reduced latency. But the technology alone is just technology. So in our lab, we started working on 5G use cases. One example that we worked on in the very early part of last year was an application where grandparents can participate in Guam weddings remotely through 5G virtual reality. I have to admit that at the time, I thought it was quite a stretch to think that there would be a serious demand for that. It's now less than a year later, and we can all see the relevance of that has dramatically increased. I have a son now planning a Zoom wedding, and I'd love to have 5G VR option available. 5G solutions are developing in ways that will provide real enhancements to our lives and to the way we do business. COVID has taught us lessons in acceleration, and we continue to accelerate innovation to meet your needs. One 5G application that is talked about a lot is autonomous driving vehicles. Imagine HIS trolleys in Guam operating as driverless. Imagine retailers like DFS providing customized offers to people who walk by their stores in front of their stores based on facial recognition or AI powered by 5G. We're looking right now at some part of our smart home solutions with a partner in Israel that has an air purifier that is in early trials can protect against and even eliminate viruses. You can imagine what a game changer that would be. We're very excited to be the first to bring new technology to the Marianas. And you should watch for some really cool announcements from us in the very near future that will involve both wireless services and entertainment. I may even have a driverless car in the basement of my headquarters right now. I'm just saying. Telecommunications and technology can offer solutions every business needs to survive and thrive in the new norm. I hope that by working together, we can capture the spirit and optimism that was embodied in the Rise Together video. We look forward to your partnership, and we work as we all work to reconnect Guam. And I know that together we're better. See you, Zamase, and thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Rod. I do have a question. What do you think of this Max Meeting video conferencing platform that we just did today? Is this sort of like going to be the new normal? I know in our business, in the news business, we're relying more and more and more, and it probably will be the way of the future in these sorts of video conferencing to get to gather our news.
You know, I've been very, very happy with this platform. You know, we tried this, we've been using it for a little while now, and the quality, as I hope you'll all agree, has been really great today. We were a little worried. I think this is maybe the most we've had, at least internally, we've had on one call. So I was hoping we weren't going to hit 150 and then we were going to say, oh no, we can't get connected. So I'm glad that it seemed to go very smoothly today. So this is something that, you know, companies can use. You know, something that we provide. I know that, you know, Zoom has been big early on. You know, we actually don't use that internally because our parent company in Japan has some security concerns with it. But you know, this has been a great platform for us.
All right, thank you so much, Rod. And finally, can I have the drum roll, please? We are going to be giving away, of course, as we said earlier, a Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus on Guam's first and only 5G network. And so I'm being handed the results right now, and the winner is Leah Nicholas. You are the winner of a Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus. And you obviously you have to be present online to win, so you must be out there somewhere. And so we'd like to invite you to come into Docomo Pacific and claim your Samsung Galaxy. We'll send you an email. I'm being told we're going to send you an email. We do have her email, so we'll send you an email and you'll get all the details on how you can pick up your Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus. And that'll conclude it for us today. I'd like to thank all of, on behalf of Docomo, I'd like to thank all of the speakers today, Dr. Parag Khanna, Dr. Mario Hardy, Junichi Kumada-san, Sam Shinohara, Dr. Annette Santos, and of course, Rod Boss. My name is Nestor Lecanto. It was a pleasure. I hope everyone just really got a lot out of this. There's so much information, and I hope you were able to absorb a lot of that. And we will have, let's see, an email. We will email the link after the webinar where you will be able to download all of the PowerPoint presentations that you saw here today. And stay tuned to Docomo, because we are planning, or Docomo is planning, for more of these Work Better Together seminars. So hopefully we'll be seeing you again fairly soon. Thanks everyone for being there, and we'll see you next time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a very great day.